Hello, everybody. Um, this is going to be a bit of a short stream because Brandon is busy. I'm also have some things to do, but I'm not as busy as Brandon. He's an awesome person, always busy, always doing stuff. He's not here yet. He'll be here soon. As we learned from the previous stream, he's always a bit late, but that's okay. I wanted to come online, say hello to everybody before the whole thing starts. And honestly, the whole thing about it was, I actually, Brandon is here. Let's turn down this music and get Brandon in here. Okay, that doesn't work as I wanted to. I'll get Brandon. So without further ado, I presume you already know this amazing person, this one and only. We need some logic in the house because, you know, I don't believe that that whole thing that Alex O'Connor did was logical. So without further ado, here he is, Mr. Logical Consistency. Hello. I can't hear you, Brandon, by the way. I don't know if you're...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, so we got Donna here in the house. Awesome, Donna.
Hello, Donna.
Martin.
Hello, Martin.
Pigstream. Hello, Pigstream.
Hello, hello.
Alid. Awesome. And Vegan Postmortem. How did I miss that? Yeah, hey, Vegan Postmortem. Nice to see you.
Awesome. Yeah, it's weird to see so many people because this is like middle of the day for me. So this is weird to see so many people in. What time is it in where you are?
So it is 6:30 where I am. So it's basically when people have finished their jobs or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, Ulf. Hey, Daniel. And hello, Carrie. So, there is Mr. Mike also. Nice to see, man. A lot of people here. That I like that.
Yeah. No, it's a good turnout so far.
So, oh wow, it's 2:30 a.m. for Carrie. Jesus, that's early. So,
I'm ready for work at 4. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's kind of
work insane, at 4 a.m. That's crazy.
So, have you seen the video, Brandon?
I have, yeah.
I also have seen it when he released it. So, I really felt like, because I could have reacted myself to it, but I really wanted somebody like an external position, because I feel like, I don't know, it's I feel like the video itself is a bit ridiculous, right? So his whole position is ridiculous, but I don't know. I wanted to say, before we get into it, how are you, Brandon? Because I don't think we said hello to everybody. I presented you, but I haven't said how are you.
I'm good, Chip. Thank you for asking me to do this. This is always fun. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was actually, as I said, I wanted to I'm never that good at these reactions because or at least I haven't done them. So I thought, doing them with somebody might be cool, and I've seen you do some cool reactions, and yeah,
cool.
Why not? And also, you're a very logical person, and I thought the errors that he's making are certain logical. And before we get into it, by the way, I used to respect Alex O'Connor even after he said he's no longer vegan. I kind of respected some of his positions, or not necessarily his position on veganism, but rather like his knowledge, right? He's a pretty knowledgeable person when it comes to philosophy and stuff. So I always assume that he's a smart guy. I don't know, but this response said something different. But let's get into it. I have it already here.
Sure.
Okay, I'll start playing. I already skipped it to the veganism side because we don't want to reach into his whole video. Screw this, guys. 750,000 subscribers. Jesus Christ.
Has anything about your stance towards veganism changed since you last spoke about it?
Can you hear it, by the way?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Been a lot of questions about this, of course, understandably. I did recently speak on the Trigonometry podcast about this briefly, but one thing to say is that the main reason that I stopped being a vegan was a practical one. I found that I practically couldn't keep it up. And so, of course, I've thought about this philosophically, and I have ideas that I can share, but it would be wrong of me to imply that these are the main reasons why that happened. It was a practical consideration. I felt like it would be wrong of me to be publicly advocating for a position that I myself couldn't practically keep up.
Pause it for a second.
Yeah, I was gonna just
Yeah.
say.
I'm just curious what practical issues he had. I know the original video he mentioned issues with like digestion or IBS. Vegan Games
IBS,
actually released a video today, and I watched it where he says that he couldn't be vegan because he kept pooping his pants. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? If first off, Alex O'Connor is at least middle class, right? He's not poor. He's not, he can travel. He has a lot of, he does a lot of YouTube stuff, has a lot of different, clearly he's making decent money at least, right? So he's at least middle class, probably upper middle class. So it's not an issue of money, right? It's not an issue of he can't make arrangements, right? Even if he is traveling, he could make arrangements. I mean, wherever he's going, if he's giving a talk or giving whatever he's doing, it's not different. I mean, if I can make arrangements and nobody even cares about where I'm going, I mean, he could definitely make arrangements. So, so if the only issue he had was the IBS thing or the, whatever issue he had, I mean, you can work around that. There are vegans who do have IBS. There are vegans who do have Crohn's, like Living Vegan Logic. So it's just a matter of working with a doctor or a qualified person to help you. And
like a nutritionist.
Yeah, like somebody again. It just depends on what he's eating, right? If he finds that if he eats certain foods, he poops his pants. He just avoid those foods. It doesn't seem that difficult. I mean, I've had issues with digestion while vegan, and what I did was I struggled with it for a while, and then I said, "Oh wait, it must be this food because every time I eat this food, I have issues." So I took out that food, and I never had issues again. So there's workarounds to it.
And the thing is, if I remember correctly from his first video, he mentioned that, well, it was IBS and it was his crazy schedule, right? Where he couldn't bother to find the right foods or be vegan per se. Maybe he was in situations where he didn't prepare any food, but rather when he got to that situation, there was no vegan food. So he would either starve, as he mentioned, because I think he also mentioned in his initial statement that he wouldn't eat enough, where he had issues also with that. So I don't know. It just feels to me like bad preparation, right? Like I always have protein bar. I have 8 protein bars on me at all times. Like it's insane. Like he lives in UK, right? As far as I know. And UK is probably the friendliest country towards veganism. He could easily buy like in absolutely every store here, you have as many sandwiches and wraps, normal sandwiches, and well, not normal, let's say as many animal abuse sandwiches and wraps you have just as many vegan sandwiches and wraps, right?
Yeah.
So even if half of that is in UK for some reason, although I doubt that it's half, I assume it's maybe even better. But like even if they have half, he still always has options. It just seems to me like practicability to him means my convenience. I wasn't bothered enough to care, basically.
Yeah. And again, like I travel down south. The South is not the most vegan friendly, but there's always a vegan place in every city. There's always something. There's grocery stores where there's vegan products. It's just like I said, that's why I brought up the money thing, because I am not wealthy in any sense of the word. But I can go and buy whatever I need, so like you're going to have to spend money on food anyway. So I don't see the difference of, okay, I've got to drive 5 extra minutes to go to this grocery store to get, a wrap or a bar or whatever, cereal. So yeah, I don't get it. I think, well, let's go further into the video because I have something else to say about that, but yeah.
I also, I honestly, again, even nowadays, if you go to the frozen food section in our stores, you have these already prepared foods You just
Yeah.
buy them, put them in a pan in 5 minutes. Like I made my lunch today, which was a good lunch. I didn't even buy these prepared. I just bought like these frozen veggies, mock meat. Bam, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. It took me 10 minutes. Like
Yeah.
if you have, but even if you don't have 10 minutes, there's still options. You can always order. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
I
go.
don't get it.
Let's see.
In terms of philosophy, nothing that I've said about factory farming has changed. Factory farming is still a moral abomination. However, the thing that has changed is, I suppose, my approach to solving the problem.
Yeah, I just got it, because this thing with I started in the right place. This thing with factory farming, honestly, it's like he pisses me off with factory farming. It's just one of those things. Like I think he says it to not seem like a bad guy. Like honestly, like
Yeah.
I don't think he cares. Like why would you care? Why would you care about factory farming, given that animals go through shit in normal farming also?
Well,
What is it that?
Here's the only problem. The thing is, and I will grant him, like, factory farming in terms of the suffering is probably the worst. But
Yeah.
if his reason for not being vegan was practicality, guess if he's eating out, it's factory farmed animals. If he's going to the grocery store, it's factory farmed or not. What I mean, you could get grass fed beef, but point is, if he's getting prepared meals, 9 times out of 10, it's factory farmed animal products anyway, right? So if his number one reason is practical, the most convenient and the most readily available animal products are factory farmed, right? It's like over 95% of all animal products or something. So that already seems like it seems like he doesn't want to put in the effort to change or to change his lifestyle, or to just avoid the foods that he knows he should when he's out eating with friends or something. So now he's like working backwards. So instead of like thinking about things philosophically and making your decisions from there, he's making his decision and trying to backtrack, trying to like figure out how philosophically he can justify it, which it ends up with him just sounding kind of silly.
And kind of, because as you mentioned it, right? He, like, if his initial issue was practicability, where he wouldn't find food, because as far as I understood, he would go to often, like, because he's like, let's say a celebrity by now, he would go to these shoots, he would go to these places where he wouldn't have vegan food. But if you go to these places, you may not have non-factory farmed animals, right?
Yeah,
So
they're not
if
going to
you're-
have grass-fed beef, or
Exactly.
if you don't have time to go and buy the best, quote unquote, best cuts of meat to then cook in your hotel, right? If his issue is, oh, I was traveling, kept pooping my pants, and I didn't have time to get the food I needed, you're gonna be getting factory farm animals anyway, right?
Yeah.
So again, I call BS on that. I think that's a little silly to have that position, but yeah, he's just paying lip service. He's just being like, hey guys, no. I still care about the worst treated animals. It's just, if we kill them and exploit them in like nicer conditions, I'm kind of iffy. It's like, that seems like a cop out. I don't know, but let's keep listening.
It is. Yeah, same.
This is what I spoke about on trigonometry, where my approach has shifted from a sort of individual boycott approach to a top-down legislation and industry reform type approach. And if you want to hear more about that in a discussion with the trigonometry boys, then I'll put a link to that in the description. So there's that, but factory farming is still a moral abomination. One thing that I suppose I did think about a lot
really quick.
was...
Yeah, again, he's taking this more like, oh, it should come from regulation, not individual boycott, which again,
Yeah.
I'll give him benefit of the doubt. I don't know what exactly he says in this other talk, but almost all regulation comes from some kind of individual action, from what I've seen. And especially if we look at others like justice movements, right? LGBTQ plus rights, civil rights for Black people, women's rights. It all stems from people protesting, people boycotting, individuals taking a position and forcing regulation, right? Nobody is going to regulate something that people are not asking for, that people do not care about, right?
And how could they even regulate it exactly, as you like if people are not in favor of it, you can't possibly regulate it, right? Like,
Yeah.
but a lot of people are opposed to factory farming because they oppose the cruelty, but they don't know the implication of that would mean meat is, let's say, 4 times more expensive. If meat all of a sudden becomes 4 times more expensive because of different regulations, as he suggested, then everybody would be fucking appalled at it. So even his practical solution to be against factory farming is not good.
Yeah. No, it again, like that, if we just forget about like just talking about it, if we look at history and how things were achieved, how progress was made, it was almost everything starts with some kind of push from the people, right? And then obviously like things really get done once you regulate it. But so yeah, I think that's kind of silly. Again, like that's just misguided. I don't know why he would think that. And then also he keeps saying factory farming is a moral abomination. It's a moral abomination. He's not actually saying he doesn't eat factory farmed food, which is also, like I said, kind of alludes to the other thing I mentioned is I don't think he's saying that because he can't say that, because again, if he's eating out and stuff, he's eating factory farm animals. So for him, it's like, guys, factory farming is a moral abomination. And I think it should change via regulation, but I'm not going to align my actions with my morals and not contribute to it. That's essentially what he's saying. Like, I agree with getting rid of factory farming, and I think somebody in the government should regulate that, but I'm going to contribute to it in the meantime. It's like, okay, so are you actually against? Like, that's weird. That's a weird position.
Yeah, he actually takes this position. I think a lot of people do this also, like where you take this position that you're against it, but you don't take responsibility for the thing that you're against. So he absolves himself of the whole responsibility by saying, it's not my problem. It's the government that needs to fix it, not me.
Right.
No, I will just pay for it, but it's not my problem. It's the government.
Right. But imagine using that for any other like straightforward injustice, right? Imagine using that for Black rights, for women's rights, for LGBTQ plus rights, saying that you're against slavery, but then paying for slaves, or paying for slave made things or something, like it just wouldn't make any sense. And before anybody says it, in the modern system we have, when people are like, well, some products are slave made, it's not as straightforward. Yes, like other countries have horrible labor laws, right? But then at the end of the day, those are their laws, and the supply chain is very iffy. It's not as straightforward. And a lot of times when people say they're slaves, they mean they make very little, but they still make some money and they still have free will. And, it's not as straightforward. So before anybody says it. But again, if I found out that a product, right, if I found out that a certain company was literally owning slaves and forcing them to make their product, I would just avoid that company.
And there's also like in other contexts, there's always this you can put forth this problem whether there are options, right? Because like I don't think you can live in today's society without a phone, right? Because this is most of the times when people mention phones, right? So you would have to look into all the options that you have, and if all the options are, let's say, awful, then what is it that you can do about it, right? You can't function in today's society. It's not practicable to not have a phone, right? That's the whole thing about veganism, right? It's also about being practical about it. So that's the beauty of it nowadays, is that you have so many readily available options. So it's not necessarily the same thing. And as with the human rights and thing that you mentioned, I completely agree with you. It's ridiculous, but I think like it's even more ridiculous because the system is a supply and demand system in this case. It's not like it's like paying for, like, it's like you actively paying for women to not have rights, and then complaining that women don't have rights.
So the way that I always word it is, when we're comparing something like cell phones or other products to animal agriculture, in one system, exploitation and violence is required. In the other one, it isn't, right? So even if the labor laws in a certain country is far less than ideal, the product that you're asking for does not necessitate that to be the case, right? So if I want, let's say I want a certain electronic, and that electronic somewhere in the supply chain happened to use really messed up, labor laws or labor, that product does not require that, right? All they have to do is change the laws or increase equality, and that fixes it. With animal products, whether it's factory farm, grass-fed, whatever, it requires the exploitation and killing of another sentient animal. There's no way to get a piece of steak, right, separate from lab grown, which is a whole nother conversation, but there's no way to get a piece of meat, piece of animal flesh on your plate without killing that animal, without exploiting that animal. It's a very different thing. That's the symmetry breaker. But yeah.
Let's continue, because we always have a lot of things.
The concept of veganism outside of factory farming. So the wrongness of killing animals and causing suffering to animals unnecessarily, even outside of factory farm conditions. Because a lot of vegans will say, okay, sure, you can sort of raise a cow in relatively humane conditions, that is humane relative to a factory farm, but you're still killing them, right? And as long as you're causing any amount of unnecessary suffering and certainly death to an animal, that's something that's wrong. I started to realize that I don't think you can
that's already
completely
not correct. Could you pause it for a second?
Yeah,
that's already like, veganism is not trying to prevent all suffering and death to all animals as long as it's unnecessary. That's because the word necessary, I mean, a lot of things are unnecessary, right? Like, you could make an argument that certain foods are unnecessary. What he's going to say later is unnecessary. Driving is like, you can make a lot of arguments for a lot of things. And the term necessary, it means different things to different people. So I don't like talking about veganism in the framework of what's necessary or what isn't necessary. It's really about rights, right? It's really about extending human rights to other animals, because there's not a justifiable or not a big enough difference to justify not extending those rights. That's it, right? Humans die in accidents every day. Humans die as a result of starvation, as a result of a lot of different things that other humans cause, right? So certain humans cause other humans to suffer, cause other human deaths, whether it's, we could look at so many different industries. That's different than saying that this group of people have no rights and can be treated as products, exploited, bred into existence, killed.
And especially
go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting you there. And especially just for like in situation like this, like let's say there is a necessity. Let's assume that for some reason you cannot, the only way to survive, you're in a desert island, whatever necessity, these necessities.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that the necessity implies that we kill an animal and not a human? Or why it implies that we kill these animals and not other animals? Like or bugs or whatever, like there's so many other, like it's insane to have to put a position where you believe that necessity, like no matter how you define necessity, it's insane to think that it's necessary to kill these animals. Like that's just, and only these animals. Like it's just a bit of
but that's the thing, is like, if we were working under his framework, we'd have to get rid of a lot of things. We'd have to stop building homes. We'd have to build only like 50-story apartment buildings, because anything else would result in some kind of animal death, whether it be insects, rodents, whatever. So I don't view human expansion, right, or human, competition for resources as a rights violation, right? Because again, it doesn't just affect animals, it also affects other humans, it affects everything, right? That's a very different than having a worldview that, okay, animals are here to be products and to be exploited, bred, killed, whatever, just for our own benefit, right? It's very different. That's the symmetry breaker. So yeah, whatever his view of veganism is, that's not what it is. We care about suffering, we care about how animals are treated, and I would say I care about total animal death. But at the end of the day, if a vegan world led to, like, I don't know, more animal death or something, I would still be for a vegan world, because it's not about the death. It's about the murder. It's about the intention as well.
Yeah, it's about the principle of it, right? Because if you go with the principle that animals should have rights, they should not be exploited, or used in any way, then obviously you can better the fact that a lot of them die. But if you treat them as commodities from the start, even if less of them die as commodities, the system can never improve. You'll always be stuck in this commodity status.
And practically, I mean, let's be real, unless we're talking about a hypothetical, practically a vegan world would almost always, I can't even think of a scenario where it wouldn't result in less death overall, less animal death. Unless we're talking weird hypotheticals, practically almost always a vegan world would end up with less total death if that's what you care about.
And all the more, like, I feel like if you care about that, if you live in a country like UK, in a Western civilization where you have options, it's all the more you're even more responsible to choose those options, because if you choose those options, it improves the economy, it trickles down. More countries that don't have these options will get these options if countries that have these options choose these options. So it's insane that he has this position, like he sees it so, I don't know if it's utilitarianism in
it's
a
more
way.
of a utilitarian framework. It's like, okay, well, how many total deaths and how much total suffering is there, versus like a rights-based or like a principle-based position where it's like, okay, how should these individuals be treated? You know, it's a very different position. But
Yeah, let's see, because I think we're only actually we're pretty good. Let's go on. Let's say, because he's gonna say some more dumb stuff.
To this principle that unnecessary infliction of suffering on animals is always wrong. I'll tell you why. It started when I was thinking about the concept of vegan junk food. So that is food that you don't need to eat to be healthy and might actually be bad for your health, you know, vegan chocolate, vegan cakes, whatever. And the sort of vegan approach to eating these products. I mean, I don't see a lot of vegans condemning the concept of eating vegan junk food, but
so I paused it because I understand his point of view. I completely get it, right? Like, he's saying that vegan junk food isn't necessary, right? And given that there's crop deaths, because that's his point of view, animals still die, it's still kind of immoral. So when you choose a vegan junk food, some animals will die for you, right? You make this conscious choice. But it's ridiculous, isn't it? Like, it's not like vegan, like junk food as a choice is not necessarily, because I feel like this is where he gets stuck in, right? Like, and it's not even a good utilitarian view, because I think his math is not adding up, because he always just does this. Oh well, what about if you eat junk food and you do this? But does this mean that this person will only eat strictly what is necessary, no junk food, no extra calories, no, like, not even the necessary calories, but rather a little bit under, so that you survive and you can survive and thrive?
yeah, well, also he's making a claim that requires evidence. I haven't seen any
Fair.
evidence that
Didn't even say that.
that like choosing junk food, right? Let's say you're eating the same amount of calories, for example. Choosing a
Yeah.
junk food item would cause more death than choosing a regular item, even if you're going into a slightly more calorie area. Again, we're growing all these crops already. I don't see an argument that, or I haven't seen good evidence that by eating more food, it necessarily entails more death overall, which again is separate from veganism. We don't care about like death in general, but if we're playing this game, if we're playing the numbers game, I just haven't seen. I would be curious if you could provide evidence besides just speculation on the total death. And also people like Vegan Games, and I know that Empty Cages or Hunter, they make a great argument is when it comes to crops, if we're talking just about total death, where is the evidence that the deaths that would occur naturally from predation, from starvation, from weather, the deaths that occur naturally on wild land are less or more than the deaths that occur on cropland, right? So I haven't seen any evidence for that either, right? Because that's when, if we're playing the total death game, it requires evidence, right? You can't just say, well, crops entail death, because natural land entails death. Wild land entails death. All of these things entail death, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I think the rights-based approach is makes the most sense and is the most consistent, because again, I don't see an issue if we put humans in the context of animals. If they were trait equalized humans that were going to threaten our existence, right? If they were trait equalized humans that could not be reasoned with, could not be kept away from crops in any other way except by lethal force, and you had quadrillions of them swarming our crops and eating all our food, we would have to use pesticides on those humans, right? We wouldn't just say, oh no,
you have to protect them, right?
Yeah, we got to protect the crops. So again, I think his position, he's just trying to cope a little bit with the fact that he doesn't want to go against his values, but he is.
But let's go further, because I see the error in his logic, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss with you.
Yeah.
The end.
But it's worth reflecting on. The concept of crop deaths comes up a lot in this vegan discussion, and it's kind of memed upon by the vegan community because, of course, it's ridiculous to suggest, as many people do, that you shouldn't be a vegan because don't you know that animals are killed in crop production? It's a silly thing to say because we kill far more animals in the production of crops that we then feed to livestock than we do in the production of crops that are eaten directly. So that crop death argument just doesn't work at all, and like I say, it's sort of a joke. However, there is a crop deaths related consideration that we should reflect on, and it's to do with this concept of unnecessary vegan food. And like I say, it started with the junk food consideration, but a better example, a more concrete example, and one that I spoke to Peter Singer in my second podcast with him about, is the concept of a vegan bodybuilder. So a bodybuilder, at least when they're bulking, when they're trying to grow, is somebody who will intentionally eat an extra maybe 200-300 calories every single day, maybe even more. And they're doing so for reasons that, strictly speaking, are completely unnecessary to their health. It's health related in that they're trying to sort of, reach peak performance or peak size or whatever it is. But you don't need to grow to remain healthy. You can eat your maintenance calories for the rest of your life and be perfectly fine and thrive indeed. So if you're bodybuilding, if you're trying to build muscle, you are eating food that you do not need to eat to be healthy. Here's the thing. So long as animals are killed in crop production, then as long as you're eating food that is unnecessary to your health, you are causing unnecessary suffering and death.
Yeah. So
what's interesting is he knows he recognizes how silly the crop death argument is.
Yeah.
But then he's still using the crop death argument just in the context of a vegan bodybuilder. So like he says, okay, it's silly to talk about crop deaths and as a reason to not be vegan, but it's not silly to talk about crop deaths for a vegan that eats an extra 300 calories. That doesn't make any sense. Again, it's not like crop deaths become a more valid argument the second that you have somebody that eats 300 extra calories, right? It just, again, there's still far fewer deaths if we're talking about total number from what I've seen, from the statistic, from the evidence I've seen, still far fewer deaths. But again, animals dying incidentally or as a result of us needing to grow food to survive is very different than a system that that breeds, exploits, and kills animals by the billions when we can eat crops, right? It just doesn't, it's not the same.
So I understand his argument, right? Like his argument, it's a utilitarian argument, right? Where his argument is saying, because that's also what he said about junk food, right? Unnecessary is the same with saying for a bodybuilder, unnecessary, right? So what he's saying is that if a normal person eats this amount of calories, those extra 300 calories that he chooses to eat for his own vanity, let's say, because he wants to look good or whatever reason, it's not necessary. So for those 300 calories, let's say one animal will die in the production of those 300 calories. Therefore, it is unethical to consume those extra 300 calories, right? And I will give you that. I will give him that. Maybe it is, maybe it is an ethically gray or unethical position to have, right? Like being a bodybuilder, maybe it is in this way a bit unethical, right? So I understand this perspective, but however, I mean, this whole video basically is coming forward. That's all he says. And but the my problem with this is because even in an utilitarian view, it's not logical what he's saying, right? Because he does his choice isn't between being a vegan bodybuilder and being a normal vegan, right? Like his choice every day, every meal that he chooses is between a vegan meal and a normal meal, regardless of how many calories, right? So if he cares about minimizing the total number of deaths that he makes, then it will always be better to choose vegan. So if his point is that being a bodybuilder is immoral, maybe also being a vegan person who rides horses is immoral. Maybe that's not vegan. I don't know. Maybe being a vegan person who abuses women, it's immoral. Does that mean you should not be vegan? No, it doesn't. It just means don't abuse women.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think, the comparison he's making, he's saying, well, a vegan bodybuilder that eats 300 calories extra, I'm speaking from his perspective. So he's saying a bodybuilder eats 300 extra calories in my lights is doing something wrong or doing something immoral. So therefore, I'm going to continue eating animal products. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I agree. Like, if we were maybe in a vegan world where the suffering and the individual rights of animals are important, are actually viewed as like universal almost, then maybe we can make more regular. And just from an environmental standpoint too, just speaking for myself, I make a lot of decisions to try and be minimal in my life, whether it's owning fewer cars, whether it's owning fewer things, paying for fewer things. Like I see the value in minimalism, but there's a difference between something being like preferable or something being like valuable to me, or like something that has value or could benefit people, versus something being moral, like a moral obligation, right? Something being like the baseline, right? To me, being vegan is the baseline. And then from there, if we want to restrict our freedoms in order to benefit everyone else, or in order to benefit the totality of the population, I'm actually for that. I've actually, for a long time, I've thought about like how good it would be for people to restrict certain junk food, to restrict certain, like to have government regulation over calories, over junk food, over all of these things that are just even like especially like aesthetic things, like jewelry, like certain types of clothing. Like, it's so wasteful and it causes a lot of harm, right? But if you're going to make an argument that someone who's eating 300 extra calories is immoral, you've got to make the argument that someone wearing a Rolex watch is immoral, right? Because they're causing, in one way or another, more resource waste, more suffering, more death with their actions as well, right? So the only way to be, like, in his eyes, like perfectly moral is, I guess, to live off the land in a cave somewhere, right? And not use any of the resources we have, or use any of the products that we create. So again, he's like a nirvana fallacy. He's saying, well,
it is,
all of these people are doing things unnecessary, so therefore don't even worry about it, which again is not the vegan position.
Yeah. And like, because you mentioned the minimalism thing, I agree with you, right? First of all, I believe that whatever you do, you should try to minimize harm, right? But when you're faced with the choices that you want to make, I believe that all of us there's the threshold of survival, and then there's the threshold of happiness, where sometimes you just got to buy this one thing that makes you happy, right? And as long as that, like, as you put it, that thing does not inflict on the rights of others, like it would be, oh, just a steak makes me happy. As long as that doesn't happen, then it's not necessarily, I mean, maybe it isn't the most moral way to go about in life, right? Because as you said, we could go just as minimal as we can, but it is still, like don't go around buying whatever the fuck you want. I'm sorry for swearing, but also don't just force yourself to eat as little as possible, or not buy anything you want for this fear, right? Just be mindful of your choices that you make. That's the most important thing. Be mindful of the choices that you make.
Yeah, and again, I don't. For me, my values are rights. Like there should be no system in place that doesn't grant sentient individuals rights. Right, the right to life, the right to be protected from rights violations, whether that be grape or violence or murder or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But separate from that, I do believe in individual freedoms, right? I think that
Exactly.
we should have the right to choose things that we enjoy, to do things that we like, so long as those activities don't directly inflict or don't directly violate the rights of others. That's it. I think if we had that moral framework, I think those are where my values lie. It's not about total suffering, total death. Like, yes, if we can reduce suffering, maybe it's better to make those choices that reduce the suffering. But I don't think you're doing something immoral by partaking in an action that may lead to some suffering, right? Like, I don't think if I drive my car to go from here to my parents' house, if I hit a squirrel or if I accidentally hit a person, I don't think I was doing something immoral, right? Assuming it's an accident. So, I think there are clear symmetry breakers here that, kind of go against this argument.
Yeah, completely agree. Let's go further, because I'm not sure if he's going to say more dumb stuff, but he's going to say some stuff.
To animals. That means that if you are a vegan bodybuilder, if you're eating a few hundred extra calories every day on purpose of vegan food, you are causing unnecessary suffering and death to animals. Now, of course, it doesn't follow from this that therefore eating animals is fine. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I suppose I'm trying to answer the question. I mean, the question is not, justify eating meat or something. The question is, has anything about your approach changed? And this is something that I was reflecting on a lot. This idea that I would often say, I'd say it all the time, unnecessary death and suffering to animals is wrong, is always wrong. But if I held to that principle consistently, I would have to condemn, for example, vegan bodybuilders. Now, of course, eating the vegan food that a vegan bodybuilder will eat is nowhere near on the level of eating factory farmed meat, for example. I mean, the life of an animal that gets killed by a combine harvester is going to be infinitely better than the life of a pig on a factory farm. Again, don't misunderstand me here. What I'm trying to say is that the principle that causing unnecessary harm and suffering to animals is always morally wrong entails the condemnation of vegan bulking bodybuilders. And yet it seems just...
But that's not our position. So again, I don't have the position that unnecessary suffering and death is always morally wrong. I don't have that position. So,
but even if you do have that position, right, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be vegan. It doesn't mean, like, my logic still stands. It still means, like, okay, don't be a bodybuilder. Don't be a vegan bodybuilder. Be a vegan.
Yeah.
Why is it that your choice is between being a vegan bodybuilder or not vegan at all? Like, when did you create these imaginary choices?
Yeah, and again, he's not saying that, but with his actions, he is, right? He's saying, oh, well, guys, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it follows that eating meat's justified because of these, this thought experiment, or because of these hypotheticals, or because of these scenarios. But again, with his actions, he's kind of dodging. This whole thing is like him talking from an outside perspective, but he's kind of dodging the fact that, like, he's contributing to factory farming. He's contributing to animal agriculture. He's contributing to the things that he still seems clearly against. So yeah, he's kind of avoiding any personal accountability. Like, sure, these conversations are important and they're interesting. And I do think there is value in government regulation to reduce unnecessary suffering, not just for people, but for humans. Could you imagine if there was a cap on income, right? If Jeff Bezos, anything over $1 million, he had to donate, or he had to, spread to, insane. Like, could you imagine how much good that would do? I've been talking about that for years and privately, about how just a little bit of regulation, right? Who needs more than $1 million a year, right? Just a little bit of regulation could do so much good for other humans, right? But am I going to call, well, Jeff Bezos might be immoral in his circumstance, but point is, am I going to call somebody who makes a lot of money and spends that money as like doing something morally wrong? No, I think they could do better things with that money, but I'm not going to say they're like morally wrong or they're like immoral, Now, if they use that money to kill people, then yeah, that's where, that's where the line is for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? By the way, are you an effective altruist? Is that what you're saying?
I'd have to. Can you define that? Like, explain that a little
Yeah.
bit?
So I recently found out also about effective altruism, and it's basically exactly what you mentioned. That if you have more, why not share it? Like,
Yeah,
it's
100%.
as simple as that.
I think there should be a cap on income. I'm actually very pro government regulation for things that have like a very clear benefit or a very clear detriment, right? Like,
Yeah.
having like the amount of junk food we have, the only reason why it exists is not because of food, right? It's because of money. It's because companies find that they can make a lot of profit because people like to eat these foods. But just by regulating, just by saying, okay, you could only purchase this once a month or something, would do so much good for people in general, that I would be probably for that. Things that have a same thing with like tobacco, alcohol, same thing with income, right? Like, if I made $1 million, I would absolutely either donate half or give half to some kind of cause or I would do something with that money. So the fact that we have endless opportunities, the more money you make, is all good and great from like an individual success level. But when it comes to like what would be better, right? Forget about moral, immoral, just what would be better, right? What do you want to see in the world? I think there's value in that, but that's different than saying you're doing something morally wrong.
Yeah, let's. I think you said we don't have a lot of time left, right? So let's finish this.
It's just intuitively the case to me, and I would imagine most vegans feel the same way, that vegan bodybuilding isn't unethical. In fact, a lot of vegans point to vegan bodybuilders as examples of what veganism can do. But what they're pointing to there is an example of someone who's unnecessarily eating food that they don't need to eat to be healthy that results in the unnecessary suffering and death of animals. And that's the very thing that outside of the context of bodybuilding, vegans are usually the first people to condemn. Now, of course, I can see people reacting to this and stopping me and going, yeah, but how does that justify, forcing pigs into gas chambers? It doesn't. That's still a moral abomination. That's still absolutely horrendous. All I'm saying is that in terms of my approach to the discussion of animal ethics, one thing that's changed is I've realized that if we are going to condemn something like factory farming or farming in general, I don't think it can be on the principle that unnecessary suffering is always immoral, because that would involve condemning a number of things which intuitively to me just aren't that condemnable. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I saw someone condemn a vegan bodybuilder on the grounds that they were causing unnecessary suffering to animals.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. I think that's his whole shtick. I don't even think it's worth continuing. And I completely agree with you. Like, it's not about the unnecessary harm, right? Like, I think like a lot of, I mean, it's important, right, to not cause unnecessary harm. It is, but I mean, veganism at the end of the day is figuring out the fact that all of these animals that we farm are just like human beings, and if we wouldn't do this to humans, why would we choose to do this to them, right?
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah, it's a rights-based approach. It's saying, okay, we have clear rights and protection for humans, right? We don't try and prevent all human suffering or all human death at all costs. We have clear rights. We have clear protections for humans.
Yeah.
What is the difference between a human and another animal that justifies us not having those same rights for other animals, right? That's all it comes down to. And there is no good answer to that. So therefore, all we need to do is extend those rights that we already have in place for humans to other animals. Obviously, they'll be trade equalized, right? No one's giving a cow the right to vote, right? Or even if you did, I was gonna say, even if you did, they're not gonna vote. But
exactly,
that's the thing. Is like trade equalized rights, very simple, and that way animals are not going to be treated like products. Animal agriculture would have to go away. Would there still be animals dying, just like there are still humans dying in various industries? Yes. Or as a result of various industries? Yes. But they are not going to die because we are using them as products, right? It's not going to be premeditated murder or premeditated killing. which is murder. So yeah, I don't. That's where the principle of veganism stems from. It's not trying to prevent all animal suffering at all costs, because that's not possible.
It's not. And why would that even be about veganism, right? Why would preventing animal suffering be about veganism? Is if somebody beats their pet or beats an animal on the street, is that about veganism? It's not, right? It's about recognizing that if somebody beats a person, it's the same as if somebody beats an animal, right?
Yeah. And hypothetically, again, if you had a human that was incapable of suffering, let's say hypothetically, or let's say a woman who's passed out, who literally will not feel anything, because of the rights that we've granted, because of the protections we have, it is still immoral to violate that person's rights. So even if somebody was incapable of suffering, they still have a will to live. They should still have their, autonomy, because we recognize that it does cause harm and it is wrong. Regardless, I guess if a person couldn't suffer, maybe the effects wouldn't be the same. But the point is, we're setting a precedent. So yeah, I think even in the case where somebody couldn't feel pain or couldn't suffer, that doesn't mean you get to kill them. They still have a will to live.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, because this whole harm and suffering, it's a, first of all, it's a hard thing to quantify, right? Like, how do you quantify suffering or harm, right?
That's true. It is more subjective. Yeah, that's true.
It is subjective. And why is it that pain all of the sudden is the one only suffering, right? There's also emotional pain. There's also like people can be subjected to emotional harassment, right? So if somebody cannot feel pain, like physically, maybe they emotionally still feel pain, right? So we should still not do this to them because of that, right? So if there is, unfortunately, somebody born with incapable of feeling pain, no subjective experience, no, I don't know, capability to have emotions or anything at all, like no sentience, then yeah, maybe that, whatever, fuck that guy. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
no, that's the thing. It really comes down to sentience. If you're sentient, right, you have the capacity to experience whatever it is that's happening to you, right? You can perceive what's happening to you, and therefore it's unjustified. Any type of violence or, well, I should say, not granting those individuals' rights is unjustified.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, and the reason, because I think there's a person, Andre here, who is like not vegan, and the reason, by the way, why we draw the line at sentience is because if you ask yourself and you're honest with yourself, and in general, like if most of the people ask themselves what is it that they value about their life, it is all the traits that describe sentience, right? Emotions, relations with others, all of it. Like it's just about that. The enjoyment of life comes from happiness, from the emotions that you feel, which is basically sentience, which animals also have it. So why would you assume that they also don't want to live for those same reasons, right? It's as simple as that. That's why we draw the line at sentience. It's not an arbitrary line that we chose. It's a very logical line that we chose.
yeah, I think these moral questions stem from sentience. Like, you can really have moral dilemmas or talk about morality with or about beings who aren't sentient, right? Because then we're talking about plants. So that's really what it comes down to, is the reason why you don't want a certain action done to you is most likely because of sentience, even if you don't know what sentience is, right? You'd say, oh, that would feel bad, or oh, I can imagine what that would feel like, right? You're perceiving an action, and most animals can do the same thing. At least,
because there's no like cognition, or what is it, like intelligence brings nothing to this that you can say, is there a equivalence to intelligence of feeling good or feeling bad? I don't think there is there?
No, I mean, you could like have a like be more educated, or have like a higher intelligence, to where you can understand like what the workings of feelings, and nervous systems and your brain and all those things. But when it comes to your experience, you could be mentally challenged and still have a will to live and still experience the world around you. So that's why intelligence kind of falls apart when we look at mentally challenged people.
Yeah, I guess my questioning of this was, let's say if AI becomes really intelligent, I mean, it doesn't mean they're sentient, right? So
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, so an AI machine could, respond really, really intelligently, but there's no consciousness. There's no individual inside of the machine.
no
Now,
awareness. I
yeah.
like the
Now,
word
if you
awareness.
could have sentience, like if somebody could I don't know, replicate sentience, that would be interesting. I don't know how that would work,
That
but
would be interesting. Yeah.
yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah. So if at some point or another somebody replicates sentience in a machine, then theoretically those machines should also never be turned off or whatever. But although I think the discussion becomes way more complicated in those cases, because a machine, if you turn it off and back on, maybe it's got the same memory, and maybe it behaves as if nothing happened before that, right? So
Yeah, that would be interesting, like a robot that was sentient. I don't even know how that would work, but I hope that sounds kind of freaky to me, so I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see.
yeah.
Before we wrap it up, are there any like comments or any interesting thing in the comments?
Yeah. That's a good point. Let's look it up at some of these comments. Does anybody have a question before we wrap it up? Because I think we finished with the video. There's no point in going further because that is all shtick.
Yeah, we got I think we addressed the main points there.
Exactly. Let's see. Do we want some comments? Oh. I see there's the man with the great machete. If you suffer less if you eat meat, then you don't. Is it therefore more moral to save the animals or yourself? But
again, that's why viewing it from a suffering standpoint is you're going to find a lot of holes in that argument, right? Because again, utilitarian, if you say, well, my well-being goes up when I grape a woman, so therefore what should I value my well-being more than the other person suffering, right? That's what it comes down to. It's a horrible argument. That's why it's about rights, right? So
yeah,
I don't really care if you suffer less because you're violating the rights of another individual, right? So
exactly.
we don't do that in the human we don't allow that in the human context, right?
And by rights, I just want to correct, because a lot of people understand rights like this legal right. We're not talking about rights as in legal rights, but rather the exact the concept of rights, right? We're talking about
the concept of rights, but I also
rights.
would be for like legalizing
me too
rights. Yeah, but yeah, we're talking about like humans, the rights that we grant other humans, whether they're legal, like even if they weren't legally in the system, I would still grant humans, or I would still think it's moral to grant humans the right to life and the right to freedom and bodily autonomy, stuff like that.
Yeah, and the whole premise is that to save the animals or save yourself, you're not saving yourself. You're doing something for yourself that you feel better. Is there anything else that you could do? What are your options? And why? Like it's a bit more complicated than that. But let's move on to the next question. Are you okay with someone selling roadkill?
Selling roadkill, no. Because again, you're exploiting animals and you're profiting, which again, like if we're not talking about a vacuum, I would even say that eating roadkill is probably wrong, just because it could create further demand for animal products or animal flesh. Selling it is definitely, again, you're exploiting, profiting off of other animals. Then the line of, well, did the animal die accidentally? Did you purposely run over the animal to sell them, right? Once you mix profit, it almost always turns to, like, you almost always start valuing the profit over the rights of the individual in almost every industry. But in a vacuum, like if somebody just ate a roadkill on the side of the road, nobody saw it, and it didn't create further demand, I mean, I would think that's really messed up. Like, I don't know why you would want to do that, but technically, are you like doing something against veganism or something? I probably not. But
It's the same as a human being. I would say anytime
yeah,
you question whether something happens, is it okay to do to an animal? Ask yourself if it's okay to do it to a human being.
Yeah.
Would you, if you accidentally run over a person, let's say you don't have to legally do all the legal paperwork or something. You just run over this person. There's no legal repercussions. Would you eat that person? Would you sell that person to eat them? If
Yeah.
not, then why would you do it with an animal, right? That's the
Yeah.
thinking, the way I see it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I have no interest in eating roadkill. I think that's, again, once you view animals as others, you no longer have the desire to find loopholes to eat them. Again, like,
Exactly.
yeah. So I think it's as simple as that.
It's the same. What about selling turkey feathers that they found in the wild? It's the same thing. And this is a bit more complex in a sense, because like if you found fingers of human beings in the wild, would you sell those fingers?
Yeah, again, when we're talking about selling, it's a no, right? Because you are
Yeah.
exploiting and profiting off of the individual. The way I look at it for feathers, like the way I always think of it is like somebody's hair, right? So if somebody cut
Yeah.
their hair in the woods and left it there, if you found it and wanted to use it for something, again, I don't think that's necessarily immoral because you're not violating anybody's rights in a vacuum. Practically, right, you could create further demand, which could lead to an industry. Or if you're selling it, then you are essentially saying that, oh, somebody else's hair is here for me to profit off of. And again, that can lead to a lot of harmful things. So in a vacuum, just finding a feather and putting it on your wall or something, not immoral. But when we look at it practically, and especially if you're profiting, like if you are selling it as a product, that goes against veganism. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole point about the reason why selling is bad, because when you sell a product, you create a market. That's basically it, right? Every time you sell a product, you create a market for it. And if there is somebody who wants to buy it, that person may want to buy it again. So, and if you cannot find the feather, what do you do then, right? Will somebody, like, if there is demand, the market will fill it up, right? Like, it's the same thing, especially given, and in a context where animals do not have legal rights, that means anybody who wants to fill that demand can just fill that demand, can just
and
take
that's a great point. Yeah, in a world where the animal rights were regulated and you found a feather and wanted to use it and that wasn't illegal, again, assuming that animals are protected, like, so none of these industries could occur, yeah, in that case, again, I probably wouldn't I wouldn't be on the street fighting for people to not use the feathers they find in the woods. But in the world we live in now, yeah, we're not even close to where that would be.
Yeah, because like if you find some human remains, right? What do? Like, you sell them, you find demand. If then you need more human remains and there's no way to get them, you just don't get them, right? It's enough. So in a world where humans have rights, but even in a world where humans have rights, like, it's still like you still should control this, because people are awful, and even a lot of people don't even care about legal rights, right? They infringe on legal rights all the time. So I would say it's immoral either way. Like, it's just don't create demand, don't sell it. Like, if you want to find the feather and you want to use it, whatever. It's kind of weird to use a feather from from an animal for some reason, but like, if you want to use it, whatever, just don't sell it, don't publish it, don't commodify the animal at the end of the day.
All right, I have to go, but I could do one more question if there's another one.
Okay, so let's see, one more questions. Let's see if there's a come on, baby. I guess there's no more questions. I don't see any questions. I just see this Ulf saying, but it's okay selling golden teachers. Honestly, I still don't know what golden teachers are, but
golden teachers, but it's okay. Well, his name is that golden teacher, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Ulf is a pretty regular. He's an awesome vegan person. He's
okay.
So
interesting. All right. If you could explain what golden teachers are, I would be interested. But yeah, I do have to go. But thank you for hosting here, Chip. I appreciate it. And this was fun. Yeah, Cosmic Skeptic. Yeah. I think he's he's just trying to find like philosophical, like thought experiments to like question the vegan position while still contributing to factory farming, while still contributing to everything that he's against, seemingly. So I don't know. Yeah, it seems
But from
like
the start, from the start he placed that position. So you're 100% right. That's what he's doing. He chose for practicability reasons or for convenience, and then decided to justify it using some form of philosophical views that not even him understands. Because as I said, even in a utilitarian view, he's still not moral.
Yeah,
right?
and he's not convinced by his own talking points. So I don't know. But thank you, Chip. I don't know if you're
Hey.
gonna keep going or if we're gonna end it, but
I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody, but if you have to go now. And thank
Okay.
you for being here, Brandon. And yeah,
No problem. Thank you, everybody. See you.
So everybody, I'm not gonna stick around some more. I mean, we could watch some other videos, but tonight I'm gonna go on Sky's live stream, and we're gonna have some awesome chats there. And there's no reason why I would continue right now. Thank you so much for being here. The title of the live stream is Reacting to Cosmic Skeptic, and we already did that. Thank you so much for being here. Smash that like, smash it like there's no other like. Yeah, there you go. They agree with this. Don't abuse animals. Animals are not objects, okay? Just don't. They're awesome creatures. They're just like us. They want to live. They're beautiful, right? And let's put in some music before I go. I think you guys have my latest video. It was testing of a method, and I'll talk more about it on Sky's live stream. But what I wanted to say is just go out there, my fellow vegans. Just go out there and speak to people about veganism and have patience, because a lot of these people they try to justify it, but a lot of the times they're not necessarily doing it intentionally. It's dissonance. It's cognitive dissonance. It's something they unwillingly do. It's something they don't know any better. So treat them basically as you would a child who doesn't know any better, right? So let's just go out there and fight for the animals if you can. Have a conversation with somebody. Drop a comment on a vegan video. Drop a comment on a carnivore video where you explain nicely why maybe it's okay as a diet, but it's not okay for the animals. Regardless, let's not use animals. Let's all focus on no animal usage, no human usage, no sentient being usage at the end of the day, okay? We all want to live. We all want to have a beautiful freedom of choice, right? So thank you, everybody, for being here. Have an awesome evening. Have an awesome day. Live vegan. And I will see you in the next one. Until then, thank you, everybody, for being here again. I really do appreciate everybody. It's honestly, I didn't imagine when I created this whole channel that I would have such amazing supporters and such amazing community. You know, the whole community is just amazing. So if anybody sees this and you want to go vegan, realize that the community is it's mind-blowing. It's a great community. So thank you so much for being an awesome community, and have an awesome day, have an awesome evening again, and goodbye, everybody.